Sarah Michehl. I am with the Land Conservancy of McHenry County. We are a nonprofit land trust located in McHenry County. If you don't know where that is, we're about an hour northwest of Chicago in Illinois. What a land trust is we like to preserve and take care of land and also support the landowners, usually private landowners, who want to do the same thing. And we do that through a variety of methods, through education programs, volunteer opportunities. We work with landowners who want to put a conservation easement on their property, which is a permanent way to protect their private property. So there's lots of different ways that we work with them. We also do a native plant, tree, shrub, composter, and rain barrel sale in the spring and in the fall. And actually new this spring, we're also going to be taking pre-orders for organic farm, like little vegetables, like tomato plants and stuff like that too. So it's really cool. We're working with a local farmer that way. So anyway, check out our website, check out our Facebook page, all those kinds of things. We do events and webinars like this all year round. So check that kind of stuff out. If you aren't here locally, I suggest you find your local land trust and find out how you can work together. We do a lot of work preserving land, and lots of land trusts do that as well. So we can only do that through member support. So the way you can find your local land trust is to go to a website called findalandtrust.org and type your zip code in, and you'll be able to find it. All right, so tonight, and this is really appropriate that we're going to be talking about native landscaping for winter beauty as I sit here as the winter storm is about to start here in January. So I think, all right, so I'm really excited to do this program because I think that winter is a really unappreciated time of year when it comes to plants. And I want to change that for people. And I think native plant enthusiasts are the best people to kind of really convert and get them excited about plants and designing over the winter. So what I want to do is get you guys to really embrace winter, embrace the beauty, and kind of change your concept of beauty from being the very obvious flowers and greenery of summer to the more subtle, but still just as beautiful textures and colors that we see during the winter. And some of the very basic design principles of winter gardening actually lend themselves perfectly to also supporting wildlife during the winter too. So it really makes sense to start thinking about things this way. Okay, so we are gonna start. Where do you start when you think about, I don't know, how do I even start thinking about my garden and what it looks like in the winter and start caring about that? How do I begin? And the best way to do it is to go outside in nature during the winter and look around. This picture right here was taken at Moraine Hills State Park in McHenry in December. So it was winter. And I stopped and I sat down and I just stared at this. And when you do that, when you sit and you look, just notice, why does this look beautiful to you? What are the shapes? What are the textures and the colors that are invoking this feeling of beauty and peace and whatever it is in you? All right. And when you really start to look at this landscape, you can start to pick out some patterns. All right. So the first obvious thing that you see are those dark seed heads from pale purple coneflower, or Echinacea pallida, which is a beautiful native purple coneflower, basically, with those lovely drooping petals on it. It's just as cool looking over the winter with those seed heads that stand up like that. And they contrast beautifully against the bronze, finely colored textures of the grasses behind them. All right. So contrast is a big thing in winter design. Light is another big thing, and we're going to talk more about that at the end too. But I just highly suggest that you just go outside. And tomorrow is going to be a really good day to do that. If you're like in this part of the state where we're getting all of this snow, it's going to be gorgeous out tomorrow. So I suggest you go out in your yard and look around and see what looks pretty to you and why. Now, I also suggest that when you see these beautiful things in nature, try to figure out what they are and how you can put them in your yard, okay? And identification of these plants is where you start with that. And so I've got a few different things on the left there under ID of ways in the field for you to start IDing things. Now, field guides are always a great way to start with. So books, but nowadays, people aren't always carrying a book with them. What do they have with them but their phone? So a couple different apps are great. Like iNaturalist is our favorite plant app to recommend to people. It's free, so that's a great download. Also, there's 2 different Facebook groups that are fantastic for plant identification here in Illinois, and they'll ID like Midwest stuff too. Illinois Botany is fantastic, and man, just join that group and start learning. And then, speaking of learn. What does that stand for? Landowner Ecology and Restoration Network. That is a private Facebook group run by the Land Conservancy of McHenry County. Jump on, post pictures, post your questions, and we will answer them. So will a bunch of other like botanists and restoration ecologists and knowledgeable landowners. So those are some Facebook and app little resources for you, okay? All right. So there are 4 basic principles of designing for winter beauty. And I love it because these are great for pollinators and birds and mammals and all kinds of wildlife over the winter. So the first principle of leave everything standing. Don't clean up your gardens in the fall and cut all the seed heads off and cut the stems down and don't do that. And I'm going to go into this, okay? But leave everything standing. Yay, it's less work for you. So that's great. The next principle is plants en masse make a really powerful visual impact from a distance. So when you step back in the street, step out on the street and look at your yard, what does it look like? Yes, an individual plant may look extremely beautiful up close, but what does it look like when you step back? And when you have large groupings of plants, they make more of a visual impact than a single plant does. Light is a huge thing in the winter. And I'm sure you've noticed this, right? Early in the morning and then the late afternoon sunlight in the winter, it's angled really low and it catches colors of certain things. It brings out the bronzes and the yellows and the reds in our plants in a way that it doesn't happen quite as well in the summer. All right. So light and positioning of your garden is important. And then hardscape, that just means usually some kind of man-made element is a great way to highlight and bring kind of structure to your gardens. So we're going to go through what these things mean, and I'm going to give you plant examples and like winter wildlife examples of how these are supporting each thing. All right, so leave everything standing. So if my picture is in the way, you can minimize me or move me out of the way or whatever. So the first, let's start big with the structure here of our garden, and trees and shrubs a lot of times will make up the backbone of the visual display that you see when you look at your garden. Um, and you can see in this picture here, the multi-trunked river birch with that super cool exfoliating bark that just kind of looks like it's peeling and flaking all over the place, really brings this whole kind of design together and gives you a focal point. The other cool thing about the river birch, which it is a native birch here in northern Illinois. Birds love to forage underneath all those little flaking pieces of bark. There could be insects in there. There could be seeds that are lodged in there. So you'll see cool birds like little nuthatches and brown creepers and all kinds of things going up and down the trunk there, which is really cool. So trees and shrubs, they're going to have interesting bark, interesting structure, seeds, fruits, all kinds of different things that you really start to notice in the winter when it's not just this like green blob of leaves. That stuff starts to really stand out. So if you have the room for trees and shrubs, get them into your design. They're also supporting different kinds of life at different levels. Birds and insects like to live and look for food at different levels, okay? Oh, and then the thing underneath the tree or shrub, if it's an open growing tree or shrub like this one is, this is an example of the plant underneath it is called aromatic aster, which is a low growing mounding native aster that is one of my absolute favorites for landscaping purposes. A lot of asters tend to get kind of leggy and look kind of messy visually. This one doesn't do that. This one has a nice mounded habit to it and is the latest blooming aster around here. It blooms, depending on the year, late September, October even, and it's covered with dark purple blooms, and it's really beautiful. Now, it does spread aggressively by underground rhizomes, so either don't put it in a really small space, or if you do put it in a small space, either be prepared to edit it and remove some of it, or just be happy with it taking up that entire small space. I've done that in certain parts of my yard, and it's like, okay, great, ground cover, perfect. I don't need to put anything else in here. All right, so bark color is a really cool thing that stands out during the winter that we really start to notice against the harsh background of the white snow. Things like our red twig dogwood here, or red osier dogwood. This is multiple dogwoods together, and you could do that. You can create kind of groupings of these shrubs, and they have extremely brilliant, nice red kind of bark on their twigs. This is here in my yard. My neighbor likes to come and every once in a while they'll kind of cut some of those red twigs off. They're great for weaving into wreaths or, using as holiday decorations or whatever. These are really forgiving, these shrubs. So you can majorly hard cut these back if you want to, if they start to get really huge and gangly, or if you want to encourage the red twigs, because the red twigs are the newer growth. The old growth, the old larger twigs, those are going to be like a brown kind of color. So if you cut it back, and it's recommended to cut at least a third of it back, in the late winter, early spring, right when the buds are starting to swell, you're going to get very quick new red growth. Okay. If you don't feel like cutting it back, then don't cut it back. Just let it grow. Keep in mind though, they get pretty big. Okay. Easily 12 feet tall by 15 feet wide. They're not for small spaces. All right. And they can be pretty aggressive. They can handle normal, medium soil. Out in nature, you find them in kind of wetter areas, but they can handle just normal garden soil as well. Now, shrubs are super used by birds over the winter. It's really interesting. If you have a bird feeder anywhere in your yard, sit and watch it for a little bit and observe the behavior of these birds. Because what they'll do is they're going to go to a tree or shrub and then go down to your bird feeder, eat a little bit, leave, go back to the nearest tree or shrub, come back, and they just kind of do this back and forth. The shrub or the tree is like a place of safety for them. It's cover for them from predators. So what I like to tell people to do when you think about winter is think about, where can I see this amazing wildlife activity happening from my window too, from inside my house? So sighting a tree or shrub within view of a window, like a favorite place where you have to sit and drink your coffee or something, that would be a really cool place to put a shrub that's going to create this cover. This here is a picture. This is from the Land Conservancy's office in Woodstock. Right outside our office window, there's some hazelnuts out there. And Jennifer, our bookkeeper, who happens to be an amazing photographer as well, got this picture of this chickadee, because this is what we've got, all these shrubs, planted all over the place. And this is what they do. They go back and forth to the bird feeder, to the shrub, and back and forth. And it's really cool to be able to watch it. Hazelnuts are a really neat landscaping shrub too, whether it's the summer, whether it's the winter. Over the winter, they've got those really neat catkins that dangle down like that. And when we get ice or snow, they get covered and they make really neat outlines and profiles, and they make it really interesting to see. So another winter shrub that's visually interesting, especially from a distance, is ninebark. So ninebark, and I'm talking about the straight native species here. Okay, so all right, let's back up a second. Native plants are plants that have grown in a certain region for thousands of years with no human intervention. The horticultural industry has taken some of those plants and bred them for certain characteristics, and they've created what are called cultivars. So ninebark is a great example of the horticultural industry has taken the, straight native ninebarks and then bred them for maybe a more compact shape, a darker color, all these different characteristics. So everything that I'm recommending tonight are going to be what are called straight native species. The things that nobody's messed around with the genetics on them at all. All right. And this is what you would actually find in nature. And this is what we recommend to people generally, is to, as much as you can, stick with the straight native species. There's interactions between insects and birds and all kinds of things that can be affected when the structures of some of these plants are changed. So, okay, ninebark. Interesting striated, striped kind of bark on it that really shows up nicely in the winter, along with these really cool seed capsules that you see on the left there. And you can see that from a distance too, especially when this shrub is up against something solid, like this is up against a fence row. You can really see those seed capsules from a distance, and it gives an interesting look. This picture was actually taken by my daughter. It's pretty cool when your kids start to notice these plant things and, start to interact with them. And it can't be in a way that I tell them to interact with it. It's got to be in a way that they're interested in. So, yeah, these seed capsules are really neat to look at too. Oh, this shrub, all right. So it needs space. All right. They want to have a mounding rainbow arching habit to them. Give them the space to be able to do that. So when I say 15 feet wide, they need that space. So give them at least 8 feet on either side of them. That's when they look the best, is when you can see them in their mature form. Okay, coral berries, super interesting shrub that isn't used. I don't see this very often in landscaping. This one's on my list. I want this one in my yard. This is a short shrub that can handle dry soil and can handle some shade. There's not a ton of native shrubs that are short, have winter interest, like these red fruits on here, and can handle some shade in the summer too. So it's kind of nice. These coral berries, they do sucker or just they form a dense thicket. Okay. So if you're not going to be okay with that, with these spreading and suckering all over the place, then don't put it in. All right. But if you have a place where that's, encouraged and you want that, this will be great for that. And you'll get those cool clusters of those berries, or technically they're not berries, whatever, the fruits on them that look really great over the winter and attract, birds and stuff too, which is just adding beauty to your garden, honestly. Okay. All right. So we covered the structure, the basic foundation or structure of your garden in the winter with those trees and shrubs. Let's go down to the ground now. Let's talk about the very ground layer. These two pictures were taken in December. On the right, we have a ground layer of wild strawberry. Yes, if I dug down through the snow right now, those leaves would be there and some of them would be green. Same with on the left, we've got a mix of strawberry and Jacob's ladder. Okay, you can see I've got the arrow pointing to Jacob's ladder. Having your soil covered by plants is very important year round. We don't want bare soil. For one thing, it's just boring to look at. Who wants to look at just bare soil, right? Or just bare mulch. We don't need that. We don't need wood chip mulch. We want plants to be our mulch. And over the winter, those plants are going to provide beauty, but they're also going to hold moisture in your soil, and they're going to prevent erosion. So this is especially important around your downspouts, around any sloped areas that you have. You need plants in there, okay? And these are some great examples of ground covers. Strawberry can handle sun, shade, just about anything, all right? And Jacob's ladder can do some sun, but it's going to be happiest in part shade, all right? Another ground layer plant for sun is prairie smoke. Again, this picture is taken in December here on a beautiful, frosty, super cold morning. I remember this morning. This plant is in a crazy high traffic area in my yard, right next to the driveway and the front sidewalk. Sometimes the dog runs over it, basketballs hit it, kids run over it. Tons and tons of snow gets piled right in this corner, and this plant does fine. All right, it can take a beating. It's amazing. All right, and it stays so tiny. It stays under a foot tall, and in the spring it looks like this. Oh, pictures of flowers. I know, I couldn't resist not showing you some of the actual flower pictures. So in May it looks like this. And then in June, this is where it gets its name from. The smoke, the seed capsules, when they start to ripen, those wispy, they're called achenes, they develop, and it gives this just this really ethereal look. It's absolutely beautiful, under a foot tall. This is a dry gravel hill species, so this plant loves super dry soil, but it can do medium garden soil as well. Okay, another ground layer that can do sun or shade is Pennsylvania sedge. So you can see what it looks like in December on the left versus May on the right there. I'm obsessed with Pennsylvania sedge. Whoever here has ever been to any of my webinars, you're totally sick of hearing me talk about this plant. This is a plant that historically would have made up the floor of our oak woodlands. It would have been composed of tons of Pennsylvania sedge and other sedges as well in a healthy oak woodland. You can use it in your landscaping too, all right? It stays under a foot, it spreads slowly. It's got a beautiful fine texture to it that you see in the winter as well. And when you highlight some little seed heads in there too, it looks really kind of neat, all right? So if you've got areas in your yard, especially oak trees or anything like that, instead of mulching around those oak trees, get stuff like this in there. Get the Pennsylvania sedge, the wild strawberry, the Jacob's ladder, all these pretty little things. Get them going around your oaks, and they'll be happy over the winter and over the summer. Okay, so the next part of leave everything standing are stems. So not only are stems cool looking over the winter, but there's actually insects inside them that overwinter inside the stems. Things like tons of different kinds of little native bees, all right? And if you don't already follow Heather Holm on social media, like on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you should, all right? She's amazing. She's got a couple different books out there. I would just Google Heather Holm, Holm, and look up her stuff, and you're going to learn a ton about amazing pollinators. This is one of her photographs, and she has a photograph here of a small carpenter bee entering a nest inside a plant stem. So they use the stems in the summer, they use them in the fall, the winter, and the spring too. These stems are invaluable, so don't cut them down. Leave them standing up, all right? And then they're also visually interesting from a design perspective. All right, so let's talk about this. Over the winter, gardens can tend to take on a kind of chaotic look. And when snow kind of like flattens things, you know, in just like this haphazard way. So if you choose plant species that have, they kind of retain their stem stiffness and upright nature throughout the winter, you're gonna avoid that kind of haphazard, just things dropped all over the place, messy look. So an example of a plant that has those characteristics is foxglove beard tongue or penstemon. And there's all different penstemons out there, native, cultivars, whatever. All of them are going to have this upright stature to them. And they have super cool seed heads. Their seed heads are really, really neat looking. When you look at them up close, they look like little beaks from like a duck mouth or something. They have really interesting color in the fall, that bright red stem, you can see it. And I was out in my yard just the other day, that picture from January, that's taken just the other day. We had some rare blue sky. And that red on the stem, you can still see that. And when you've got a bunch of these penstemons massed together, it makes a big visual impact. It's pretty cool, okay? These can do sun, part shade, dry, medium, like they're pretty adaptable. Just don't put them in standing water, you know. They will seed a lot all over the place. That's their role in nature, is to do that. I let them just do that. And if I don't like where they've popped up, then I take them out. You know, it's that simple. Okay, so we've gone from the ground layer to the stems. Now we're at the seed heads. So this lovely picture, I'm going to use some more of her pictures, was taken by one of my conservation at home properties, Linda Gergone in Bull Valley. She does some amazing photography. So anyway, birds love seeds. Makes sense, right? Everybody thinks they got to put out like these extensive bird feeder systems. And really, guys, if you've got the plants with the seed heads attached to them, you've got the bird food right there. So you don't have to necessarily do that. So also inside certain seed heads, and I'm going to show you some pictures, insects will actually overwinter inside some seed heads as well. All right, so this is a picture of a little junco sitting on little blue stem, which is one of the ultimate winter grasses, all right, for design purposes. And I'm going to talk about that more. All right, so from a design perspective, and hopefully you've got this now, masses of things make a visual impact. So instead of like buying 2 of a certain plant, maybe buy 9, you know, give it a little bit more of a mass. And it's going to make a bigger visual impact when you step back at the road and look at it from an outsider's perspective. All right, I like to do that. The other cool thing about massing these plants together during the growing season, when they get the flowers on them, it makes it very efficient for pollinators who want that one species. Maybe they want pollen or nectar just from that one species. Great, they've got a whole big group of them right there next to each other, instead of one here and one 20 feet away and another one another 50 feet away. All right, so design and ecology meeting, super cool, right? The other thing, okay, let's not forget the sensory experience that we can have over the winter of smelling. So these seed heads, I cannot walk past a bergamot seed head without squeezing it and smelling it. It's amazing. It's like, I don't know. I wish I could do smell like through this webinar. It's minty, it's citrusy, it's amazing. So it's really neat when you've got some of these on the edge of your garden too, or the edge of a path or something that you're actually going to use during the winter, because it's okay to go out in your yard in the winter, right? And interact with these plants. Now, Monarda visculosa, this wild bergamot in particular, can be kind of aggressive. So if you don't have space, don't choose this particular species. There's tons of other amazing things to put in. If you've got some space, or more of like a meadow situation, a seeded area with lots of dense competition, then this plant does well. If you put it in a small garden, like a new garden with a bunch of bare soil in it, this is going to seed all over the place. All right, so the other kind of designy thing to think about doing for winter interest is to site these flowers that are going to have interesting seed heads up against something light in the background. So it could be something as simple as the sky where you're able to see them. And granted, this is me taking this picture. I'm down low taking this picture up against the sky. Start looking at plants from different perspectives, you guys. Be that weird person laying in the snow, looking up. Like, start doing things like that. You really start to see interesting things. But you can also site it up against a wall or a fence or something like that, where the light is going to hit it in a certain way and potentially make an interesting shadow. All right, so start to think about that when you're putting these plants in. Another great example of a plant maintaining an upright stem and the snow not just automatically smashing it, is echinacea. So this one here is echinacea purpurea, or purple coneflower. I love it when these little hats of snow develop. Go out tomorrow, guys. Look at your plants. See if these little hats have developed. This is another picture taken by Linda Gergone. I absolutely love it. And then the other thing to think about with your plant structures is contrast. So during the winter, we don't have this huge variety of color, right? This massive variety of like all the rainbow colors. But what we do have is amazing contrast set up for us. And from a visual design perspective, that can be really powerful when you step back and you look at the dark, tall Culver's root in the back there with the prairie drop seed in front, and that Culver's root super contrasts with the snow. So it's just a really interesting kind of perspective. We've got stiff, upright Culver's root and finely textured, drooping, wispy prairie drop seed grass as well. All right. Culver's root, I think this should be used more in home gardens. It can handle medium soil. I've got it there in normal garden soil. You'll find it out in nature, generally in wetter places. Okay. It does pretty well in normal garden soil. It gets some good sun there too. It likes sun. And then prairie drop seed, I can't say enough about that grass. That needs to be everywhere. It's got a beautiful mounding habit to it. It can do sun, part sun, like it can do some variety. Oh, I threw in another summer picture. All right. So the white plant in the very center, that's what the Culver's root looks like. So it's super cool looking in the summer too. And then the next one I want to, oh, and you can see the prairie drop seed down on the bottom left corner there, that like wispy grass. All right, rattlesnake master, that's all the way over on the right. You guys, if my picture's in the way, move me out so you can see that rattlesnake master. This, let me see, do I have a picture of the seed heads? I do. This is so interesting in the winter. I mean, it's super interesting in the summer too, but in the winter, it really stands out. And when you look at it from a distance, it's so cool looking. And the birds love the seeds too, which is really, really neat. And it stays upright, which is fantastic. That's what we want when you're thinking about designing for winter. You know, it's interesting, when I was preparing for this program and I was reading about some of the history of winter design, I was learning that over in England, there's a long tradition of actually starting the garden specifically thinking about how it's going to look over the winter. Not gardening for how it's going to look in the summer, but starting with the idea of what does it look like in the winter. And I think that's kind of interesting to do. All right, the grasses. Here we go with another Linda Gergone picture showing prairie drop seed with the background of some wild turkeys. They love the seeds. Okay, lots of things love the seeds on these plants. Prairie drop seed has this amazing wispy texture, very kind of see-through. You could see through it. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And when you put that up against harsh snow, all right, which is just very harsh, the contrast is amazing. Okay. And it looks amazing over the summer as well too. All right, so the next grass is little blue stem. And this is the grass in late afternoon in the winter when you see it and it catches the light, and it's in a place where it's sighted east-west. So it's like facing the west and it can catch that light. It looks like it's this glowing mass of russet bronze beauty. All right. And it works in like smaller situations. It works in large, giant masses. It will seed around in your garden, whatever. I just let it. If I don't like where it's seeded, then I just take it out. Who cares? I absolutely love this for winter garden design. This to me is the most impactful native grass that from a winter design perspective that you can put in. The other thing about these winter grasses is down in the bases of them. So the very base where it's super dense, insects overwinter in there. How cool is that, right? So you're providing privacy, you're providing beautiful color, you're providing texture, all of this just from putting these grasses in. They also support certain little skippers over the summer, which are, it's not a moth, it's not a butterfly, but it looks like it is, whatever. They lay their eggs on the blades of these grasses, and their tiny caterpillars are able to eat the blades of these grasses. All right, lighting. So this is another picture from Moraine Hills in like December, I think this one was taken. This lighting is just, and I've touched on this already. If you're able to site, especially these grasses, so that they catch that late afternoon sun, it's stunning. You guys, you want to be able to look out your window that faces west and see this in the winter, all right? The way that it catches the sun and it just looks like it's glowing and on fire. And can you see the little dotted seed heads that are throughout? It makes a nice backdrop for that. This particular seed head is, which penstemon is it? Large flowered beard tongue, Penstemon grandiflorus. Okay, this is like a super showy penstemon with a really beautiful flower on it. Okay, so hardscape, whatever. This is just like the human structures that you incorporate into your garden. So it could be signs, it could be benches, it could be rocks, wood in, put out in cool, like driftwood in cool ways. All of these things, when snow is on them, when frost is on, basically, you guys, when snow and frost cover anything, it's going to look gorgeous, right? But these help highlight your garden and give structure to them, not just in the winter, but in the summer as well. So I think it gives the garden an intentional look. It looks cared for. It helps it give a look of like, this is a place that you care about, all right? And when your neighbors see that, they're going to see intention, and that's going to make them think, all right, they care about this place. And that's going to make them look favorably on it as well. Paths in the winter, put some nicely scented plants along those paths with cool seed heads that smell good. So things like the bergamot, yellow coneflower, that one smells really good when you kind of crumble that seed head in your hands. Mountain mint, oh my gosh, mountain mint. Silvery texture, color to it. Just, I mean, you squeeze that seed head and it's like toothpaste. It smells so beautifully. All right. Okay. And then finally, we've got some resources, where to buy these plants and stuff in Northern Illinois and mail order. And you guys, here's what happened last year with COVID. Everybody stared at their yards because we're all home, and everything in like the garden community exploded. So plant sales went through the roof. So if you want to order plants, don't wait until May or June to try to do that. They're going to be sold out. We see that it's already happening in the gardening world, okay, that plants are selling out. Our plant sale opens March 15th. So you have some time to think about what plants you want. It's pre-order, so you just go to our website and get your order in, and then the pickup is in May in Woodstock. And there's a bunch of other really great tree and shrub and plant sales and places to mail order as well. So some books to get some great descriptions of these plants in all seasons. The first one, that Native Plants of the Midwest, is fantastic. All right. It really gives you a great idea of how these plants behave in a home landscaping setting. Sometimes when you take them out of nature and you put them in a pampered home garden, they're not going to look the same. They're not going to grow the same. So that book is a good resource for that. And then to learn more about winter design concepts, that Seed Heads in the Garden, pretty interesting. I mean, it focuses on seed heads, so it's got a lot of emphasis on fall and early winter, but the concepts really come to life in that book. And it does not focus on native plants to the Midwest. I'm pretty sure he's maybe an English author, so it's focused a lot on plants in Europe, but there's a lot of overlap, okay? And the design concepts you can apply here in the United States to the plants that we have. And then there's a bunch of different Facebook groups and online resources as well. And with that, let's see what kind of questions we got here. Katie or Megan, do you want me to go through the Q&A? I can do that.
Yeah, if you can see it.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay.
That's great.
Latin name of aromatic aster. Let me go back. Let me go back here. All right, I can't go back. Let me see if I can type it in here. This is going to take me a minute. Symphyotrichum. Oh, you guys are putting me on the spot. Symphyotrichum oblongifolium. Oblongifolium or oblongifolius? I can't remember. One of those. There you go. Where there'll be a syllabus available. No, but are we sending this recording out, Katie?
Yes, we will
Okay.
have it uploaded to our YouTube by the end of the week, and we'll email all of everybody who signed up for the program.
Perfect. Oh, Sarah asks, when and how do you recommend pruning 9 barks? So I don't totally have that one figured out yet. Here's the thing about 9 barks. I think they look best when you don't prune them. They need to be able to achieve that mounding form. So I try to not prune them as much as possible unless there's like insane pieces sticking up all over the place. Now, they are one that if you are going to prune them, you should prune them after they're done flowering and after the seed capsules, are there. So I would, if you have to prune them, I would prune them in the fall, probably early fall if you have to prune them. Okay. Carol, will TLC be selling coralberry? No, I wish we were. I wish we could get that. We can't. I want it. And I'm the one that runs the plant sale. So no, we're not going to have coralberry. Does Pennsylvania sedge need a trim? I don't ever trim it. I burn it is what I do in the early spring, but you don't have to do that. You can mow it if you want to in the early spring. That's not going to hurt it, like super early. I'm talking like, I don't even know, February, early March or something. You can do that then. I usually burn it in March. Okay. Oh, you're welcome, Bree. What do you do with aromatic aster in the spring? All right. So in the spring, I either burn it in the early spring. Do you see the pattern here? Or I leave it. If you're gonna cut your plants down, if you're like, I don't want to look at the entire dead plant form forever, you can cut them down to and leave at least 18 inches or something of plant stem standing around the middle of May or something. It's when it's okay to start doing that if you want to cut them back. All right. Carol says, thanks. Okay. Is there anything in the chat Katie or Megan, that I missed?
No, nothing in the chat. So we got all our questions.
We got all of our questions. Perfect. Good. Look at that. I'm actually on time. All right. A miracle. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I encourage you to get out in your yards tomorrow after the snowstorm. This is very timely. I love this, Katie. And just look at your plants. See what looks beautiful. Go for a walk somewhere tomorrow. If you've got snowshoes, this is a great time to use them. Go out to a local park or something and just see what's beautiful, and find your local land trust. Become a member, get involved with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I have to say, I don't know if I'm speaking for everybody here, but definitely me. I'm really excited to go outside tomorrow. There better be a good snowstorm because I want to see some little hats. I want to see some little snow hats on my plants.
Oh my gosh, Katie, I have seen pictures where people put tiny Santa hats on top of the tiny snow hats on their plants. I'm like, are you kidding me right now?
Oh my gosh. I never knew. I have a new winter hobby to explore.
Right? It's awesome.
Wonderful. We're getting lots of wonderful thank yous in the comments or the chat. So thank you so much. Oh my goodness, so many in here. There's Jeannie and Sarah and Laurel and Kathy, Karen, Michelle, Dee, Sally.
Hey, if any of you people that liked this presentation, if you're in like a garden club or anything and you want a presentation, just email me and I'll tell you about it.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for coming. And thank you again, Sarah, for taking the time to do this. We love having you. Yay.
I loved all the pictures.
Cool.
Yeah, they were gorgeous.
Good. Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.